Hello, how are you?
Good.
Good.
How are you?
All right, here, I'm going to ask you a few questions. What are the pros and cons of technological education?
Um, with technological education, there are a few pros and a few cons I can think of right now. As for pros, um, there with technological
Yes.
education,
Mm-hmm.
there's variety. There's more resources for students.
Yes.
Um, in regards to like the library, students have access to many more books through technology, ebooks, audiobooks. There's also more media resource out there for students, so it's easier access for education, research, and so forth. Um, Cons I would see is if there's anything that happens, computer goes down, saving any information, and it doesn't happen to show up, um, then I can see that being a con for some. And then also, there are some sites that are just not as user friendly as usual, so I think that would be a con with technology.
Okay, thank you. Do you think there's anything we need to improve on?
Um, we're going to relate that to McKinney High School. One thing that I do think we need to improve on is basically educating the students a little more about what's available out there because there's so many different types of resources out there for students. So if they are aware of that, then they'll be able to access more, and just giving them more exposure to that. I think that if they are away from getting that exposure, then they won't be aware of what's out there for them when it comes to research purposes. So that's the only thing I can really think of with technology. Other than that, I think it's great. It makes things easier for teachers, um, and staff as well.
Okay, thank you. Here, one last question so you don't panic. In the ways of being implemented into education, how has technology changed since the past 10 years?
I think it's changed drastically. We have more access, more mobile access than what we did in the past decade. Usually before it was always stationary. Now we're able to get on our phones, do research projects on our phones. We have our iPads. We have several different types of mobile devices. Samsung has their devices out. There's so many different ones. So I think in the past decade, the access is a lot more easier. I think it's just getting education on what's out there and learning what's out there, since there's so much out there, um, is the only disadvantage. But other than that, I mean, if you take advantage of what's out there, then you definitely um, gain a lot of access to anything you want to research, really.
That was great. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
How are you, Miss Spain?
I'm doing well, thank you.
All right. I have a couple questions to ask you. Do you mind that?
Sure.
Okay. Um, how do you feel about technology being used in education?
How do I feel about technology being used in education? I think it's a positive thing. We're able to do, teachers are able to do so much more with the use of technology. We're able to access information so much faster, as far as like databases with relevant information, reliable information. Um, we can pull video to show in class. Um, we're able to now take a snapshot of
Mm-hmm.
a test,
Yeah.
and it goes straight to a website and grades it right there and tells us the score. There's just so many possibilities with technology that it's a positive thing.
What are some negative qualities that we need to improve on?
Okay, as far as cons or negative parts to using technology, I would think that I've noticed here lately, probably within the last couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
most students have a device in their hand, a phone, and it seems that the majority of the students will have that device out during class time when uh, there might be instruction, and the students are listening to music or watching a Netflix video or texting friends, and they're not paying attention to class. So I think that that would be an issue that needs to be addressed and corrected. Um, I think that maybe a stricter policy in place would help that issue. As far as any other negative piece may be the way technology is used. I think it needs to be not just a tool, but a teaching strategy. It needs to be implemented into lessons and working seamlessly in the curriculum.
One more question for you, Miss Spain. How has technology and education changed in the past decade?
Okay. I can think of two off the top of my head. One being I am the media resource specialist, so I'm in charge of the library and the books. Um, the way students check out books is very different than a decade ago. Most of our students have devices and they download ebooks, whether they're off of Amazon or Barnes and Noble, or through our online catalog. They're downloading instead of checking the paper book out in the library. Something else that I think is different is the way that students can share what they're learning. They're now creating prezzies and different kinds of presentations and putting them out on the web. And anybody all over the world can access that information and see what they're learning. So I think instead of just sharing what you know locally in your classroom, students now have the opportunity to share around the world. So I think those are two big things that are different in technology.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
How has technology changed your way of teaching?
A lot. I try to make as much, I try to implement as much technology in teaching because I think that's what you're going to be dealing with after graduation.
In ways of being implemented into education, how has technology changed since the past decade?
It's been revolutionary. It's been a revolutionary change. I think people who were resistant are now involved, and I think those who are involved have become much more involved.
How has technology changed your way of teaching?
For me, it's been very, very significant because I was a classroom teacher, a very traditional type teacher, and now I'm working with the Apex and the EHI, where students are working online, where all of their tests and quizzes are online. So much of their work is online, so they are not interacting with a teacher nearly as much. They're interacting with a computer. And I'm just there to help them when they get stuck on something, when they have a question that they can't find the answer to, they need some concept explained. So I'm just there, so it's a lot more one-on-one in that sense. But on the other hand, there's not much teacher-student interaction as much as there would have been 20 years ago.